Guys, are you excited that I've finally moved on to start talking about manga? I bet you are. I'm excited too. And today I'm here to tell you about the best ONI manga that I know of. So it's basically my best ONI manga, not necessarily the best, but unless you have some other interesting manga to add, then might be the best. Who knows? Let's see. I'd be happy to hear your other suggestions. Please comment wherever the comment will be on this particular page and let me know what you think. But first, let's go ahead and jump in on a little background on Oni themselves. You know, like what are Oni? Isn't that an important question? I think it is an important question. So Oni themselves are have an interesting background. There's in the modern Oni, the image of the Oni, you have the the red skin or the dark skin, the horns, the glaring big old eyes, hairy, like kind of wavy, non-straight hair, big, oversized, muscular, wearing, having like bull horns, fangs, bull horns, and tiger skin pants. Now, the bull part and the tiger part, that is important because there's a compass, the direction, I believe it's northeast, directly northeast. It's right, or northeast. It's right between the direction of the bull and the direction of the tiger, and that particular direction is called like the devil's gate, or the oni no mon, or and so that particular direction is considered bad luck, and so oni became kind of a catch-all for all these things. But they didn't start out like what you see with the big old things and the lightning, the big old maces and the clubs and the lightning and everything. They started out in Japan as something slightly different. But even these traditional oni, you see lots of variation. You see some have one eye, some have three eyes, some have extra arms, some use different weapons. So there's all kinds of oni, but what we're talking about is what we have that started on the Japan archipelago or whatever, and then what came from elsewhere. Okay, so you've got the Hindu raksha demons, which are called yaksha in Japanese, or yasha, and those demons, that idea transferred into Buddhism. And of course, with Buddhism, there was not just Buddhism, but a lot of Chinese culture made its way to Japan, including language like the kanji, etc. And even the Japanese written language is based off of that. And then you have the visual style. If you look at Japanese art, you can definitely see lots of comparisons, lots of similarities with Chinese brush ink art. The visual look of the yasha, really carried through to the Buddhist paintings of hell, where you have like the horse-headed and cow-headed or bull-headed demons who are protecting hell. And this image kind of came over, right? And you have another spiritual belief called Onmyodo. If you guys know about Onmyoji, they're like these shamans, okay? And so the shamans really spread the belief that Oni are like the bad humors, the bad things in the air, spirits that cause sickness and famine and etc. And then they're invisible. Uh, so you've got the Buddhist art tradition, and you have the Onmyodo spiritual tradition. You've got the kanji itself, Oni, which is it's like a combination of different parts. There's no actual, like, nobody knows actually for sure how this kanji developed, but there's some theories. One of the theories is that it's made up of parts like dead person versus and person make body, so like dead body. um there's another theory that it's close to the word on, which is like hidden things that are hidden, unseen. And then mononoke, like mononoke hime. Oni no ke is also a similar phrase. It just means in this case, something that doesn't have a shape and is something to be feared. Uh, Mono no kai. Kai is like something to be feared, something to be stressed about. So that's coming from outside the islands. All right. And then we have the things that are more indigenous to the islands, to Japan. And that's the before Buddhism came in. You have the idea of uh, anything that caused, like, natural disasters must be these other creatures, these Oni, things like lightning, things like, thunder. Instead of just the idea of there's us and then there's the Buddhist hell, but they had idea of like there are other worlds, other planes, and things that come through to this side. Those are often these terrible things that they consider the Oni. And then you have like the yokai, which were more local, uh, local phenomena, something you heard in the woods, something you heard in the toilet. Uh, and originally, yokai didn't have any physical features. It was all what you hear. And so they were all sound related, like they were all something that you heard. And that's how you knew yokai was. And later you would check, and then maybe something was missing or something broke, and you could say, yokai did that. And so the Oni uh, of the Onmyodo tradition very easily merged into this kind of yokai idea of Oni, the hidden evil that causes sickness and everything. So all these things kind of merged together. When you had when that Buddhist tradition came over, other things came over, like the when you have the zukan, like the books that have all the pictures, like, hey, F-14s, here's a little book this thick. It's all pictures of F-14s, all the types, all the everything, pictures that kids love, this collection of books. But these kind of things were popular in China, and that popularity, they were also, a similar thing was popular in the West, like bestiaries, where these are the creatures that exist in the world, and monsters were right in there. And this kind of thing became popular in Japan. Okay, so I'm getting through all this stuff so I can tell you the best Oni manga, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Oni. And the reason that's interesting is, like, of course, the earlier manga that we're going to be looking at, those Oni look like our idea of when somebody says Oni, they have that's what they look like. They have that a similar look, with the horns and the fangs and the big stick, and the tiger pants. And then you get to more recent manga, the two manga that I'll be focusing on in my next video, the big one, the big finale, uh, Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer, and The Promised Neverland, where you have Oni that don't look anything like, well, some of the ones in Kimetsu do have an Oni-like veneer, but like in general, there's a lot more freedom as to what these demons look like. And that's more modern, but not necessarily only a modern interpretation, as you will see. But what's interesting to me is that even though they look much different and there's a lot more freedom in the expression of these Oni, they still have many of the attributes of traditional Oni. So that's something that's completely interesting to me. Hey, so this is the second part of the video. I've talked a little bit about the history of Oni, and now I'm going to get into some great Oni comics. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera over here. Bam. And so what are we talking about? All right, I'm just going to move around in a general direction. Let's see. I think I'll start with this. This is Gakko Kaidan, not to be confused with Gakko no Kaidan. Okay, this is by Takahashi Yosuke. It's like an omnibus. The main character in this dies so many times. It's just like, and then the next story, he's just there. There's no explanation. It's just, you know. So this comic is this chapter 106 in volume 6. This is just called Oni. But what we have here, this is not your typical Oni. This is the akawara. In other words, like a tile. So this is a tile that goes on one of those traditional Japanese houses tile roofs, and it's in the shape of an Oni, but it's got like a body. That's why it looks so peculiar, you know. So anyway, in this story, this Oni tile basically shows up in front of this one girl and says, you know what, I'm too old to do my job anymore. I'm too old. You come with me. And she comes with him out to the school playground and shows her a vision. She points to the ground. It's right here, he says, right here. Points to the ground, shows him a vision of bombs dropping, and then disappears. And so she's at school, and she's wondering, like, is there anything about Oni around here? And he's like, I don't know. Oni, I don't know anything about that. But there used to be some tiles on the old building and stuff like that until during the war, a bunch of bombs were dropped right here. And then so she runs out and says, everybody, you've got to get out off the playground. You know, you guys got to get out of here. And then, of course, explodes, and they realize there was a bomb that had not been detonated, and found next to the bomb wreckage is a piece of the tile, the Oni tile. So it was that's a neat little story where, you know, the Oni is a protector. So I think we see in a lot of works where in Japanese comics where we get to see the Oni as more than just a bad guy. Okay. And then we're going to get into more of that later. I'm just going to work my way around. Let's go ahead and talk about Kimetsu no Yaiba, the Demon Slayer. All right. Uh, it was recommended to me by so many people. I was like, all right, I got to read this thing. And I got into it, and I was intrigued. The art didn't get me right away. It seemed a little rough. But in this, you've obviously got the Oni character. You've got Oni, he finds out that Oni are going to be like when you're in the mountains, better be careful. And poor Tanjiro, the main character, discovers that his family has been attacked by Oni and that his little sister has become one. And but he decides to protect her, find a way to get her back to human. Okay. And while he's protecting her, he comes across a demon slayer. And the first thing the guy does is basically he preaches at him and tells him, like, don't give away your agency, don't give away your agency. Don't let another person decide whether or not you live or die. You should, hold on to that agency. So this comic can be kind of preachy, and you know what? I'm totally there for it, because what it's saying, there's a lot of good stuff that it's saying here. It does like overly enforce some gender roles, like he's saying, like don't whine. You're a guy. Come on, don't whine. And this is Sabito, and he's actually one of my favorite characters. But I actually have this costume. So, but yeah, he says, you're a little kid, you're slow, you're weak, you're not a man. So this, I don't think, is necessarily he's saying that you're not a masculine person, as much as he's saying like you're still a child. But there are many times where they kind of overly emphasize uh gender roles, but there's other parts in the story that push against gender roles. So, I think it's a much more complicated story than that. So the first volume was enough to get me going, but honestly, it was the second volume, this volume, that grabbed me when he was fighting the Tenno Oni, the hand demon or devil. And when he defeats this demon, and the demon is disintegrating, I mean, that the look of pity, like, because his little sister had become a demon, he is now afforded the ability to see demons as more than what they are, but he can also see what they were, right? And just that look in his eyes touched the demon as well. The demon realized, like, you know, uh, why it was so weak and wanted to become a demon. And when Tanjiro reaches out and grabs his hand, man, I cried. I really did. And I thought this scene was beautiful. And just the sadness in Tanjiro, the mercy. This is when I hear, like, this is some people watching the anime thinking, oh, this is just like any other Jump series. And I don't know. I kind of disagree. I don't think it's I don't think it's the same. I think there's a lot more going on here, and that's why I did research on this particular comic. But if you read the first and second volume and you don't get what I'm talking about, that's okay. It's not for you. Okay. That's okay. It's only 2 volumes. You give it 2 volumes. And if that doesn't do it for you, it's all right. It's not like my wife telling me that I really need to read One Piece up to volume 50 to get it. Because, that's a little bit more of a investment. Okay, let's work our way around. All right, here we go. Oh, this is a good one. Hell, hell, jigoku, kozo, boy, hell boy, basically, or hell kid, or, even hell baby, but it's not really a baby. It's a hell boy. And this is an interesting character because it's mixing a lot of different things. Like you've got his father is a mad scientist. You've got like a Dr. Frankenstein kind of thing going in there. And then the boy himself is killed in a car accident, thinking echoes of Astro Boy, uh, and brought back to life. The wife and the mother just goes crazy. She goes cuckoo, go nuts, because when he comes back to life, he's this grotesque thing. But what happens is if he eats somebody, he turns back to normal. Ooh, that is complicated and interesting, right? Um, if you look at the creature himself, it is a mix. You've got the Frankenstein thing going on, you've got the vampire thing going on, and you've got the werewolf thing going on, because actually we find out later in the story that the father is part werewolf. So it's got a mix of classic monsters, and then later on he gets a horn. So he's kind of big, right? And grown up. Uh but it's echoes again of Frankenstein, because uh well, before I can show you that, I should show you this. He has a dream about being the king of demons, like the Buddhist king of demons, which is Dai, uh, was Enma Dio, right? And his name is Enma Dio. So it's kind of, his name already is kind of like a joke on that. Uh, but he gets reborn a couple times, you know. There's the history. But he gets reborn a couple times. Where, like when the castle burns down a la Frankenstein, he falls to his death, but his eyeball pops out a la Kitaro, and the eyeball floats around and he gets born out of the eyeball, you know? And there's another scene which I somewhere missed where, oh yeah, here, his, like, they put a new brain in him and transfer memories. So it's like he's being reborn many times, and there he is in his new form, walking out into the world. Uh, but later on, he does meet the actual Emma Dio, and he meets this one creature here, this three-eyed creature, uh, who basically says you accidentally let monsters out into the world, and you've got to go bring them back to hell if you want me to remove this horn that I gave you. So now he's really got the Oni thing going on. So it's more of a, he's got the classic monster tropes, but he's from hell and he's got his Oni horn. So I think we can consider him an Oni. So anyway, that's an interesting story there. This is by Hino Hideshi, by the way. Hino Hideshi. I'm going to mention a couple more of his works. This is one of my favorites here. This is Makiko. Ma as in like evil or demon. Ki as in Oni or demon. And Ko. But Makiko is a common female name. So this Makiko is a certain demon from hell. She has to bring people's souls into hell, and then the person in charge of hell, the big bad, will make her pretty, make her the prettiest demon, and that's what she wants to do. So her normal you know, you've always got this kind of hair with the evil characters. But so right now in human form, she's the assistant to this idol. The idol is she's all pretty and popular, and she plays this innocent character, but she's actually not very nice. And she smokes, and she used to, be a sex worker, and so she's really not all that innocent at all. And of course, Makiko has all this information, and she kind of uh at night she goes out and she basically curses her, and the she wakes up and she has all these terrible dreams, and she in awake she imagines that everybody's against her and that they all know her terrible past, and that her career is over, and the fans are calling her slut, 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 slut. And it's like very, Carrie like, when Carrie imagines everybody's laughing at her. And she imagines newspaper headlines, and well, actually, I don't know if that's imagination. Uh, and so she decides to off herself. And right at the end, right when she's about to do it, uh, and Makiko really pushes her buttons and gets her really upset, so that she's about to do it, she's like, she can't go through with it. So she knocks her unconscious, and all the little devil guys, if there's any doubt that she's an Oni, all the little devil guys from hell are like, oh man, we were gonna eat her. And she's like, no, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. But she just couldn't go through with it, right? And then she wakes up and she's like, so what if I have a sordid past? Like, I don't have to be an innocent idol. There's all kinds of different ways for me uh to be a star, you know. So she kind of wakes up with a new hope, and then the big bad is like, you idiot, why did you do that? And she's like, I don't even know why I did that, but it's a very similar story is repeated. But I really like this idea of this demon that just can't be bad enough. you know so that's Makiko, another Hino Hideshi. Okay, here's the last Hino Hideshi one that I'm gonna look at. So in this one, when he does this particular style, with these eyes and stuff, you can tell this is for the younger, a little bit for the younger crowd, possibly. So this is a really looks like a happy story. You've got the Yama Oni Gongoro. Okay, looks like a really happy story. You've got the mountain Oni. His name's Gongoro, and lives in the mountains. And he's not a bad guy. He's hanging out with his yokai friends. He's a pretty good guy. He likes dancing and showing off his strength and everything. And everybody loves him for it. He's friendly. He's like, I'm going to go out in the world. And what happens is he falls in love with Oyuki here, who is blind, and he's just taken with her. And when she's in trouble, he saves her, by killing this big old giant snake, a la King Kong. There's a lot of Allahs, okay. And he realizes that, he wants to be with her. So he goes to visit her, and he, just by being himself and being helpful and friendly and playing with the kids, he endears himself to her and the kids. They love him. Uh, but then when they get to the town, and he wants to marry her, and they meet the parents. The parents are like, what? I don't know what to do. Let's talk to the village elder, because I don't know how to say no to this guy, because he seems all nice and everything. And so everything seems to be going fine until they talk to the village elder. And the village elder basically says, okay, I have a plan to help get rid of him, because the parents are thinking, you never know when he's gonna like go back to his Oni ways, his evil Oni ways, right? But they've never seen him do any evil Oni ways, right? But they're just assuming. And so the village leader says, okay, well, while Oyuki is away in Kyoto getting her eyes worked on by a doctor, um, you need to cut your horn off. It's like, what? And so he asks his Kappa friend, how can I do that? And the Kappa says, well, that's a bad idea, but I can do it. You know, I can tell you how it won't hurt as much if you use these special leaves, blah, blah, blah. Cuts off his horn. He's hornless. And then he goes back to the village leader and goes like, okay, yeah, good job. So now you need to cut off your fangs. Humans don't have fangs. So he cuts off his fangs. And he's like, oh, this is torture. And he's like, okay. And then you've got your claws. You're gonna have to cut off your claws. He's like, okay, I'm cutting off my claws. And of course, you know, he's like wandering around. He's not in the best shape. And you know, they're like, they did it. They did, like, oh my gosh, he did all the things. Uh, the kids try to warn him. They say, don't go back to the village. They're going to try to kill you. And he's like, no, they wouldn't do that. Look, I'm human now. So they wouldn't do that to me. Uh, he's very trusting. And then finally, the village elder says, well, as she's blind, she also wants you to be blind as well. And they're lying, you know, like she doesn't want that at all. She's away. She's not speaking for herself. And so he stabs himself in the eyes. He blinds himself. And as soon as he blinds himself, they kill him. They kill him. And this is just this most tragic story. And he dies there right as she comes back, fully sighted. Uh, and she's like, Gongoro, Gongoro. And they're like, why? Why did you do this terrible thing? It's like, well, we never knew when he was gonna, you know, he's an Oni. We never knew when he was gonna go back to his evil ways. And she's like, Oni, you guys are the Oni, you know? So it's a really great, tragic story. Um, but worth time. I I love that more and more of his works are getting translated into English. That's super exciting. Super exciting. The other comic, which I used in my research, was this one, The Promised Neverland. And I was reading this around the same time I was reading Kimetsu, and I realized that both works really, I found so many instances of monster theory that I could apply. And that's basically why I decided to do the research on Oni and on monster theory. And you know, it starts out very innocent. It's all very idyllic. And you start to see something's weird when you realize that everybody has numbers tattooed on them. You're like, that's um, you know, ominous. And then this testing thing, you know, they don't look like they're having very much fun. That looks kind of ominous too, because they have to do that every day. Um, and then there's all these barriers, you know, there's gates and barriers and bars. There's things that are, you know, keeping them in. So that's another sign that maybe, you know, you've got a little Norman here thing. I wonder what they're trying to protect us from. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, right? So you know, there's a metaphor, there's the hide and go seek, which is called Oni Gokko. In other words, pretending it's like a Oni simulation. Now, I looked into Oni Gokko, the Japanese version of hide and seek, and I thought it must be, you know, an extension of the Western game, and it totally isn't. It developed on its own. It's parallel evolution, folks. So when we get to this gate, uh, and we see like poor little Connie has forgotten her rabbit. She's about to be adopted. This is an orphanage. I don't think I mentioned that. The main character and uh, Norman, you know, uh, they everybody's orphanage and everybody's orphans. You see, yeah, yeah. So the main character Emma and Norman, they come to give Connie back her little rabbit, and then they see this truck. They went through the gates where they'd never been before. When I saw this, all this mechanical things going on here, I also felt, oh, this is also like a metaphor of, of processes that systems that turn children into commodities. And sure enough, Connie is dead, ready to be processed by these big bads, the Oni, into food for rich Oni. So already we realize that they're like farm animals, and that they're being turned into commodity. So there's commercialism, there's capitalism, not capital, but like there's commercialism, there's class, there's and there's monsters. So all kinds of interesting things going on. We find out so much more about the Oni as this tale goes on, but it seems like this insurmountable world outside, this terrible world outside, that they are being protected from, but actually they are being made to serve that world. And that grabbed me right away. And and when they find out their beloved mama's complicit, that's just the shock. So that with that momentum, I zipped right through this thing. And I think my wife and I agreed that probably the combination of having the artist and the writer separate allowed the writer really focus on making this very well knit story and world. So there's a couple of there's some holes in Kimetsu here and there, but overall I like it very much. But still, this one I think is a lot tighter story, closer to like Full Metal Alchemist, which is quite tight. Okay, and then let's talk about Lum. Why are we talking about Lum? Because this was an important comic to me. I learned Japanese through this sucker. Okay. Not this particular French edition, but like the original Japanese editions I had. You do have the Oni here, Lum. She's like sexiest Oni you ever did see. And she's got the horns, she's got the fangs, she's got the tiger underwear and everything. Her father is very Oni like. But Takashi Rumiko has made all these great classic yokai into aliens. And so she's kind of mixing the science fiction and the monster. But she's still keeping some, some Oni like she's still trying to be somewhat faithful to the original creatures, like Oni being violent and aggressive and monster like. So what I liked about this, so many things I liked about this, but a big one was that everybody speaks a different kind of Japanese. So I was really able to, I just had so many questions and so many culture points also shown in the comic. So I had so many questions. Every time I met a Japanese person, I would have lots of questions for them, like, why is the watermelon round? And, how come there's so many different ways to say you? And, they weren't language experts. They didn't always have the answers, but I did get a good idea of how complicated and how fascinating the Japanese language is. I think it gave me a really good base. It prepared me for the enigma that is Japanese, and it was my gateway into learning Japanese on my own. So yeah, that was good. Now, when we talk about Oni and manga, oh yeah, well, I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man, I've read up to volume 13 and I'm enjoying it immensely. it took me a couple tries to get in actually because it was it wasn't going in the direction I thought it was going to go. I mean, once I realized the direction it's going to go, yeah, I was, immediately fascinated. Chainsaw Man, uh, the devils in this one, they're not really like oni, okay, but they're the devils in this are uh they each represent a concept. And so, that's why you have a chainsaw devil, and you have a truth devil, and you have an eternity devil. The concepts themselves don't seem to be based in any kind of transcendental fact. It's like the human image of something. So the existence of devils very, very closely tied to humanity. So very interesting stuff. Check it out. So yeah, that was good. Now, when we talk about oni and manga, there's somebody who we cannot ignore. Okay. And that is Nagai Go, because when you talk about oni and manga, like he's your guy. Uh this particular one right here, this is interesting. Yami no Utage, the like party of the dark or something like this. This is interesting because it's not a typical comic story. Basically, he's talking about the research he did into the Shuten Doji legend and Oni. So it's all autobiographical. And he's talking about his fascination with Oni. And boy, is he fascinated with Oni. Like he talked about how his first serious story, which I'll introduce, Oni, Revelation, like the 2889 Revolution, how he combined science fiction and monsters. Where do we see that? We just saw that. He does that a couple times. He loves the beheading. He loves that, but he said that every time that he drew an Oni story, he would get sick, so that it was, somewhat cursed. But he talks about all these places that he visited, and he learns about all the history of different Oni related things, especially related to the idea of the Shuten Doji, whose story is kind of spread out all over Japan. There's some famous versions. There's a mountain here, not far from here. Well, it's a little bit far, a couple hours. Named after Shuten Doji. There's different versions of Shuten Doji. Shuten Doji is like this Oni that loves to drink. And he's big and he's bad, and he's a general. He has lots of Onis under his command. And basically the four heroes, the like actual historical figures, had to get him drunk and trick him. Because he loves the sake. They gave him this special sake that they were given, and they trick him. And then they cut off his head. The head, of course, attacks them. But that's one version. The Shuten Doji, which is closer here in Kyushu, is actually a baby that was super strong and drank sake. That's a badass baby. So, but this mentions another story which shows up in I think it shows up in another, this one? No. Oh, I put it away, I think. Well, there's another Hino Hideshi story with this kind of idea, where there's an Oni attacks a samurai at the Rashomon gate, the famous movie Rashomon. That's a famous gate. And the samurai cuts off his arm, later, his this old lady comes to see him and like, oh, just I'd love to see that arm. And then she's like, haha, it's my arm, and turns into an Oni. So there's that's a famous story. It kind of connects to some werewolf stories in other cultures where that's how they find out the shapeshifter, the werewolf, is that the missing parts. So that's super interesting. It's got a little afterword by eminent yokai expert Komatsu Kazuhiko. So some interesting stuff there. Just because the Shuten Doji legend, there's all kinds of versions, and there's all kinds of different backgrounds. But yeah, that's a really good one. Oni. So this is like reprinting a lot of his Oni related tales, but not all of them, because you couldn't fit all of them in one book because there's so darn many. But the very first one, and this is the important one, is the first series. He'd been drawing gag comics up until this point, but it's Oni, the 2889 Revolution. Okay, so basically, in this futuristic world in the 29th century, devils are attacking the humans, and you're like, those bad devils. But then you get the backstory of why the devils are attacking humans. It's because devils are treated as second and even third class citizens. They're entertainment, fighting to the death. They're slaves. They're just treated horribly. They're hunted, whatever. They were created to be the playthings of mankind, right? But there's also like ones like this dude who has fallen in love with a human woman. They're in love with each other. Love. And intrinsically, except for the horns, there's almost no difference between them, And so when the father, who had been nice up to then, finds out that there's a love interest, he's like, no way, screw you. And he him and the daughter, they elope basically and hide, but the guy finds them, and he's a military leader, he's got power, he finds them, and he just can't accept it. And so but when they show him his granddaughter, they're like, look, your granddaughter. Now this is what happens, I think, a lot of times when you hear about international international couples, like the parents being against it, but then once they have their grandchild, they're a lot more you know they love their grandchildren regardless. But in this case, nope. Sees the horns, and Onida, he just loses his mind, throws the baby against the wall, and then shoots at it. But of course, his daughter jumps in the way and gets her head blown off. Poor thing. So, uh, so the basically he turned into an Oni first, and then he becomes more like an actual Oni, and he leads a revolution, and they're fighting against the humans, but the humans are kind of winning. Oni aren't doing too well. So what they decide to do is they take a trip, like a time slip back to the past, and then they start subjugating humans back in the past. And so all the stories of Oni being these terrible creatures are these guys from the future. And so they create like a hell on earth in the past. Wahahaha. And so yeah, that's an interesting little time circle there. Um, this is a good one. The white world, the monster of the white world. The kid's so afraid that something's coming, and there it is, big scary Oni, you know, and he's freaking out. He's freaking out. He's like, I'm gonna kill that sucker. And but then he realizes it's just Namahage, it's his brother. It was all scared for nothing. And then we have another science fiction slash Oni story. This one is also has a nice ironic ending to it. Um, you've got basically Oni start attacking humans. These Oni from space. See, UFOs. Onis from space start attacking humans, destroying everything, killing all the humans. And the humans are like, why? Why are you doing this to us? And he says, well, just look at your own history. Look at what you did to us, look at what the people of the past, especially you Japanese, look what you did to us. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, look, it's in your history, the history of Momotaro. It's like, what? Momotaro, that's just a story. Dead. So uh now this is an interesting story. This is actually was in a girls comic, but this is actually the first appearance of the Shuten Doji, the Nagai Go version. Um, so he eventually made another whole series about this boy who is actually a demon, who helps and protects humans. This actually predates dun, 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 Devilman. So interesting stuff. This last story was actually published in Epic Magazine by Marvel Comics. And so that's why it's backwards, and that's why it's in English, but here's Japanese translation as well. And this is a, interesting little thing where how this one man felt so much hate that he became an Oni. So a great book. And you can see in this one how Nagaigo is already kind of trying to look at the Oni from a different perspective, not just as a monster, but as a more complex kind of being. That's the fascinating part. Now, let's get to my hot take. My hot take is that his giant robots, they are all Oni as well. That's my hot take. Okay. When the pilot of Mazinger Z uh finds his grandpa dying, the grandpa uh shows him his robot and says, with this power, you can be a god and save humanity, or you can be a devil and destroy humanity. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. You're totally free to choose. The monster machine, Mazinger Z. That's what he calls it, the monster machine. And then he said, you can do with it what you will. Ha 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 ha. If the world is your oyster, basically. And so, and you look at this thing, they're saying, it's a monster, right? It's got the horns, it's got the big evil looking grin, so it's this was an exhibition I went to just a few years after I moved to Japan, but and you've got other of his Oni fetish is here. Mao Dante. So when is that? 1971. Then Devilman. Artewa Dareda. Who is that? It's Devilman. So allow me to just cut in here for a few seconds and talk about Devilman. This is Gekiman special. Devilman Hang. And this is a comic where Nagaigo tells the story of how Devilman came to be. He talks about how for the animated version, he wanted to base him like on a Western superhero with the pants and the belt and such, but also to give him the devil image. He decided like for the bat motif, go there. At the time that he was doing this, he also, though, like for the comic version, he needed to match it to the reader's expectations for that particular magazine, shonen magazine. And so he had to go a little bit wilder with the manga version. Okay. What's crazy, at the time he was doing five comic series. His assistants were working full blast. But yeah, so I just want to say that. So like if you're like me and you perhaps learned about the animation first before you ever saw the comic version, and you saw some of the animated episodes, and you're like, yeah, it's a cool idea. This is a devil who's decided to, as it says in the opening song, betray other devils in order to protect humankind. So what's interesting, I found that idea interesting. I like that idea. It's an idea of kind of redemption, or the possibility of somebody evil wanting to do good, and because of love, so when he's doing it out of love for this one girl, right? And then of course when you read the comic version, which has a full-blown apocalypse at the end, and everybody dies, and all the characters that you loved in the animated show, let's just say it doesn't end well for them. Okay, be warned. This was probably one of my first big manga shocks. My first manga trauma was to come across the comic version. I think that's where I start to realize that Nagaigo is sick in the cabeza, if you know what I mean. And I think you do. But like very devil-like, not a friendly face at all. Violence Jack, considered a continuation of Devilman. Another Enma-kun. A lot of things with transforming. Look at that. That is not a friendly looking face, They always have horns. Grandizer. And there's Shuten Doji, the shonen magazine version, which went for several volumes, 1976, 1978. He's just obsessed with the Oni, is he not? You have Susanoo, that series. It's the Japanese god, also tied into Oni tropes. You've got this is Majin Saga, where even more demon-like Mazinger. And Devilman Lady, which I was super into for a while. And then these are other illustrations he did for like the NHK. I mean, they knew that he was their guy to go to for the Oni illustrations. So Nagaigo, he's your guy if you want to talk about Oni and comics, you know? So that's it. Those are my fave Oni comics. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. And we're back to form talking about manga. And then next time is the big finish, the application of the monster theory to Kimetsu and Promise Neverland. So hope you're looking forward to that as much as I am, or even a little bit, even half as much as I am. So because I'm enjoying making this, I enjoyed making this video. I love talking about this stuff with you guys. So thanks for following, and I will see you in the funny papers.